Matt and I are going to be talking about what a connected campaign really looks like and how a connected campaign is actually a better way to run a digital fundraising campaign. So often when we're thinking about our digital fundraising, it's very much like piecemealed, if we're honest. I spent almost 7 years doing fundraising, and even then, even though I knew the best practices, we would still run like independent efforts. We'd send this email off. We would do this social post. We would do this here. We would do this. Often we'd say, hey, who should we send this to? And we would say, everybody, which is not a strategy, by the way. It's just an admission that there is a better way. And we're going to be walking through that with you today. We're going to be spending the next 45 minutes really walking through what I call 6 questions that will ensure that you have a connected campaign. Now, this isn't trying to be like a new framework or like a new way of thinking. We're trying to keep it simple. We're going to ask 6 questions. We're going to answer those questions. And then throughout the presentation today, Matt is actually going to show you how you would do this inside the DonorDock platform. And speaking of Matt, welcome to the webinar.
Hey, Noah, thanks. Appreciate you inviting me to join you today and excited to be here with everybody.
Absolutely. And it's such a privilege. Matt is the CEO and co-founder of DonorDock. So we're grateful to have him on today and taking some of his time to really show you what we've been building inside of DonorDock. But let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. Actually, just some housekeeping really quickly. If you have any questions throughout today's presentation, just drop it in the chat. Myself, Rob, or Matt will definitely address any questions that we can as we get into this. Let's go. So the problem we're trying to address is that most campaigns don't fail because of effort. They actually fail because the pieces don't connect. It's that this over here doesn't necessarily connect to this over here. And that disconnection actually creates a lack of trust in our supporters. It also doesn't really leverage the full experience that we can have or we can create for our supporters. It's like I'm sure you've had this experience too, where like you buy a new product, right? And the sales process is incredible and it's amazing. And then they're like, if you need anything, we're here for you. And you're like, yes, I'm into this. And so you buy the product, you commit to it. And then the first thing that goes wrong is like you call up support and support's like, we value you, you're so amazing, but you should call back another time because we're fully loaded on calls. And you're like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not a connected experience. Or by the time you get to talk to someone, they're like, hey, I actually don't understand your problem. I'm going to have to go over here. And so it's disorienting to have a disconnected experience. And it, again, builds kind of like distrust in the entity. And so what we do by accident, I think a lot of times in our fundraising campaigns is we create a similar disjointed experience for our givers. And what we want to do is ask these 6 questions that we're going to go through today that allow us to make sure that we're connecting our audience that we're reaching. Who are we talking to? What are we trying to say to them? How are we reinforcing that message throughout all of the different touch points of the campaign? How are we making sure we're following appropriately? So, like if I did something or I didn't do something, it's not generic follow up, it's actually contextual to what I did. It's not like, hey, did you watch the video? And I'm like, I already watched the video. Like, you should know that, type thing. Or, hey, can you give to this campaign? It's like, I already gave to the campaign. Why are you asking me again? All of those little signals can create disconnection, and we want to help you create a connected experience. So, this is what most campaigns really look like. There's a blast email here, a social post here, a donation page over here, a thank you that doesn't really say anything, a follow up that never happens, and maybe a report that you have but you never actually looks like. And it's understandable. We're very busy. We wear a lot of hats as fundraisers. And so this experience isn't by design, it's actually by the lack of design and kind of that connectivity. And so what we would like to do is we want to orient the rest of this webinar around these 6 questions. And these 6 questions are going to be the ones that hold our campaign together. Think about them as the connective glue of our campaign. And those questions are, first and foremost, who are we trying to reach and why them? Who are we trying to reach and why them? Now, often at this point in the presentation, people are like, what do you mean who and why? We're trying to raise money. Like we're just trying to raise the $10,000 or the $20,000. Like that's our starting point. And again, that's the outcome we're trying to get to. But when we're designing a connective campaign, we actually have to flip the script and really orient ourselves around who are we trying to connect with and why are we trying to reach them? What's the context of the relationship? And that first question will unpack even further. But again, we're going to start there so that we can achieve the outcome of ultimately raising more money, acquiring more donors, getting more volunteers, whatever the internal organizational objective is. To accomplish that, we actually have to start with our audience objective and who they are and what context they have. That's then going to allow us to provide the answer to the second question, which is why should they care right now? Like, why should they care right now? Like, why do they care that you need to raise $25,000? We need to take that into consideration when we're writing the messaging, when we're trying to connect with them. Again, a connected campaign is designed to connect with our constituents to our organization's goals that we're trying to have. Third question is where are we sending them and does it match the message? You know, if we're picking these people, we're saying this really great thing, and then we're sending them to a generic giving page on our website, that's a disconnect, you know? And it's not just about giving. You could be sending them to some other type of ask, right? But if it's like we're asking them for something specific and then we send them to a generic page, that's disconnected. Like they already jumped through the hoop of saying, yes, I'm in. And then now they have to like re-navigate something else to basically be like, wait, am I on the right spot? I opted into this campaign to give $500 to support kids' educational funds. And now I'm on a generic giving page and it's asking if I want to give to a building fund, a children's, like I'm confused, you know? And that's what we are going to help try to prevent. Number four is like, what happens if they give? Like we should expect when we ask people to give, they're going to give. So what happens next? How do we maintain that momentum? Number five is what happens if they don't give? Like if I ask someone to give and they don't do anything, then what? And lastly, what are we learning as the campaign runs? What are we seeing in the data? What are we seeing in the campaign report? And how do we then incorporate that learning into the next campaign? Okay, let's get into each of these questions and we're going to deep dive into them. So, question number one, who are we reaching and why them? The default audience for most of us, if we're honest, is everyone. That's not a segmentation strategy. That's truly just a list. You know, if you're sending the same year-end appeal to a brand new donor and a donor who gave to you 10 years in a row, we're missing something on both ends. And so ultimately here, what we want to start with is yes, we may want to reach as many people as possible, but we need to actually break down our audience into smaller segments because that's going to allow us to create a connected experience through the rest of the questions. So some examples of these groups might be first-time donors, repeat donors, lapsed supporters, maybe engaged non-donors, even something like volunteers. And so what we can do is we can actually segment out by relationship and behavior. And so we have 3 or 4 groups you can actually treat differently. Not 14 segments you never act on, but really just looking at like what are the 3 or 4 segments of our supporter base that we can orient around as we're thinking about this connected campaign. So one way to think about that is, okay, we have donors and we have non-donors. And we have new people that have engaged, whether they've given or they maybe just engaged with our organization. We have active individuals, so repeat donors, but maybe like active volunteers. We have lapsed individuals. And for those that maybe aren't as familiar with the term lapsed, often it's used to say, hey, someone participated in a previous 12 months, but they haven't participated in the last 12 months. Now, your organization might define lapsed as a different time frame, but historically, it's basically saying this someone was engaged and now they are not. And that could be that they gave before and they haven't recently, or that they were engaged in your organization's email list or they were coming to events, but now they haven't engaged recently. Both of those are kind of what we're going to refer for the rest of the webinar as lapsed. So they were engaged and now they're not. And again, these simple segments, even just these 6, if we think about them at the start of a campaign, it enables us to then customize the message and the giving experience for each of these 6 groups. Now, we're not going to go through all 6 groups today. We only have, 30 minutes together left or 40 minutes together left. But what you can do is you can apply the same concepts we're going to talk through about the lapsed donor group to all the other 5 segments when you're planning out a campaign. And so you can kind of say, okay, we need to get to this goal. Let's start with these 3 or 4 audiences, 5 audiences, 6 audiences, whatever is palpable for you. And then how do we actually design a connected experience for all of them? So at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Matt just to show what building out segmentation really looks like and how we in DonorDock make this extremely easy for you to do. Matt, take it away.
Sounds good, Noah. So I'm going to make sure my screen's sharing there. I think it is. So yeah, as we're talking about this lapsed donor segment, that's kind of the example that we're using today. The first thing we've got to do is we've got to be able to kind of report on who those lapsed donors are. And so in DonorDock, we're going to go into our reports. We actually have a pre-built report for lapsed donors, but in this case, that's 289 donors in this demo environment. But really, I want to actually target that down even further. So I'm really interested. We're trying to raise, or we want this kind of targeted, connected campaign. Our goal is to solicit gifts kind of in that $50 to $500 range. That's the kind of range we're looking at. And so I could take the 289 donors. I want to add another column here, which is the average donation amount column that we have for each of these donors. And I'm going to go over to that column. And because I'm targeting that 50 to 500 range, I'm actually going to filter this segment down to just those that have given their average gift falls within that range. And that feels like a very targeted list of people that I can appeal to for this campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that filter. And now I've got 105 donors that fit that criteria. Now, again, I want to target it a little bit more. I'm really targeting just individual donors here. I'm not really looking for corporate donors. So I'm going to filter this down just to individuals. There's my 99 donors that I want to target for this campaign. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this report and I'm going to call it my lapsed donors 50 to 500 report. And that's going to allow me to have essentially like a dynamic segment concept. So I can come back to this report anytime, load it up. It's going to bring up the most up-to-date data that fits my filters. So I'm going to save that. And then the other thing I'm going to do here, and this is my last step in this first part of the demo, is I want to add these 99 donors to a marketing list that I can use right now for this particular campaign that we're doing. So I'm going to do lapsed donor reactivation. Oops, misspelled that. Campaign 2026 and make that as a new marketing list. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And that's going to add these 99 donors to that marketing list for us to be able to use as we go further into our connected campaign.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And I love how you showed how easy it is to not only filter down to kind of one criteria, but you can even go deeper. And again, we're keeping this pretty high level, but I think it's really important. So again, what we know about this segment that Matt just created is that they used to give and now they haven't in the last 12 months. That's helpful information. So they're not net new to the organization. They've given before. Matt took it even a step further and said, hey, we only want individuals and we only want them if they've given an average gift of $50 to $500. Again, that's taking kind of our major donors that have lapsed and putting them in a different campaign because we might want to communicate with them differently. Organizational donors, you usually have to communicate with differently. He's segmented those individuals out. And maybe our like lower kind of everyday, like $5, $10, $15 donors, we've kind of said, hey, we're going to set those aside as well. We're really targeting kind of this average gift. And that's going to be really important in the next steps that Matt's going to walk through. But let's get into kind of the concepts and the questions we're going to ask first. That's going to help us really make sure this is a connected experience for that new segment. Now, the next question we're asking is like, why should these individuals care? Oh, Matt, Ross is asking a question about how you filtered to lapse donors. We used a pre-built report, Ross, but Matt, how would you kind of advise? I know Ross is one of our new customers over at Lollipop Theater.
Yeah. So, yeah, when we went to that report screen, there is a pre-built report under the contact reports for lapsed donors. So, Ross, that's like the easy button. That's going to give you that base of your lapsed donors in that report. You can run any kind of contact report though, and then just adjust the filters on that report to whatever prospect or lapsed or active, whatever kind of stage you're really looking for there. But that lapsed donor report, that's the easy button to get there.
Absolutely. Like, we make it super easy in DonorDock, but again, if you're trying to do something similar in maybe a different software or something, lapse is really just based on they've given a gift at some point, but their last gift date was more than 12 months ago. And so that's all you're really looking for is that group of people. They've given before, their average gift is 50 to 500, and then ultimately their last gift date is more than 12 months ago. Okay, let's get into the next part of this. So again, why should they care? That's the next question we're going to ask is why should these supporters actually care? Now, this is going to be important because this is now going to inform, oh my goodness, my my AI bot is wanting to just come into the webinar today. So, but in this case, the like why they care is actually going to inform the fundraising copy and then even inform the giving page communication that we have that Matt's going to walk through. So again, at every touch point, we want to take into consideration who the audience is and why they care or why should they care. And then we want to weave that into the email communication, the direct mail appeal we might be sending, the phone calls we might be making. Again, we're going to focus on email for now, just as the digital side, but you would want to weave all of this messaging into every touch point you would have with this segment or with this group. And so again, a generic, truly forgettable message might be your gifts help families in need, donate today to make a difference. After now, we're saying we're going to work with the lapse donors. We want to be specific, recognizable, and relevant. Hey, it's been a while. You showed up for our families when you were just getting started, or when we were just getting started. The work is still here, and so is the need. Again, you're at least acknowledging that they've participated in this work previously. You're acknowledging that they are a partner. Maybe they haven't been in the last 12 months, but they are a partner of yours. That type of messaging would be different than someone who's giving to you actively, where you're like, you show up every day to help us do this work. Can we count on you now in this moment of need? Again, or we know you're going to show up again, and we want to invite you to be a part of this. Again, it's different messaging for different audiences. Now, there's 3 questions every donor is asking when they're reading a message. And this isn't just for fundraising communications, it's for any message. But again, we're going to apply it to our fundraising context. The first is why now? Why am I receiving this right now? What is the time sensitive reason that this campaign exists? Why should I pay attention to this? We get littered with messages every single day, and we're always trying to filter which ones are important. Why is this one important? Why is this one important? The second question we're asking is why me? Like, why am I the person that needs to participate here? Understand why now, but why me? What's the relationship? Why is this relevant to me? And so in our communication and in the giving page experience, we want to make sure it's clear that this is for them. And that's more than just saying like, hi, first name, but it's more of leaving a what we call me-sized hole in the story that makes it very clear that I can step into it. And then the third question you're asking is why this? Like, why would I give to this right now? I understand that, now I understand you want me to participate and it's relevant to me, but like, why this? Like, what's the concrete need or the moment this gift will move forward? And so that's really kind of expressing the outcome or what's going to happen after the fact and making sure that that aligns back to your audience. So once we know this, we're going to take this messaging strategy and now we're going to incorporate it into what we're sending, but also where we're sending and does it match the message. So for example, this is where most campaigns kind of lose people. The donor shouldn't have to translate. The page should really pick up the conversation the email started. And so if you send out an email that has this beautiful message that's kind of, answering those 3 questions like why now, why me, why this, and then you send them to a generic giving page, that experience becomes disconnected. Whereas when you have a matched experience, you're basically saying, hey, I've answered all these questions. I've gotten someone to basically click on something and go to the next step. And so that next step should have context of where they're coming from. And so for digital campaigns like this, I always recommend that you actually build out a custom giving page. Don't use the one on your website, your generic one for the everyday donation that's serving a different purpose. You actually want to create a giving page that matches the giving request, that matches the giving request. And that then ensures that your giving page picks up where the email left off. The headline, the image, the ask matches the campaign. And then ultimately, at the end of this, we want to have those gifts also attributed back so we know that this actually came from this campaign so we can learn. And then we also want to make sure we write the email again that matches back to that audience. So taking these two questions into account, now Matt's going to kind of show you what this looks like inside of DonorDock. Matt?
Yes. So we're going to start from where we left off here from our report that we created. In full disclosure, I have pre-created a few of these things in this demo environment, just knowing that, building a true connected campaign probably going to take longer than just a few minutes to do it. And with our demo time, I went ahead and pre-created some things. So the first thing I want to look at is that giving page. So completely agree, Noah, like building out specific giving pages for these different campaigns and even down to the different appeal level can make a lot of sense. And it helps us in our tracking as we go. So I went ahead and created this simple lapse donor reactivation May 2026 giving page. It's in draft mode right now, but it does kind of talk a little bit about, going back to your point, some simple messaging around this was really targeted towards lapsed donors. So it's been quieter here without you. And trying to create a little bit of urgency. We have camp coming up. We're trying to fill camp spots, and these children need sponsors. And so I can go through and I can set up the different settings that I have. Again, the messaging, this can all be very specific and should be very specific to what I'm trying to raise for right now. A lot of different options for recurring gifts, custom amounts, all sorts of different things. One thing I want to talk about a little bit is like the success settings. And I think this kind of factors into what happens after a gift. And so one of the things that you can do in DonorDock is to send an automatic email receipt / thank you after a gift comes through this giving page. And you're even able to select which template that you would like to send. And so this is another opportunity as we're building out a connected campaign is to have a thank you acknowledgement receipt that is actually designed for this specific campaign and speaks to what this campaign was about so that when they get that thank you, it's actually making sense to the campaign that they gave to. And then we have some different tracking things. And so this is where I want to track this to the campaign that I have created. So I've got my lapse donor reactivation campaign. So again, campaign's kind of that big bucket of like, why are we raising these dollars? And then I want to tie it to the appeal that goes with this, which is going to be my lapse donor appeal. This is my email number 1 that I'm going to send out in May of 2026. And so I've pre-created those campaigns. Again, the appeal then is like, how am I asking for the dollars? So in this case, that's this particular email that we're going to be sending. And this giving page goes right along with that. And then I can set my other tracking things. We won't go into super detail here on this for today's demo, but I am able to kind of set it up to track the different data points that I want as things are coming through. I could automatically badge somebody, for example, that gives through this giving page. I could automatically add them to a new marketing list that I may want to use in a future step. So lots of different options as it relates to that.
One thing I
No,
want to highlight
yeah.
is you were talking about the customization of the messaging, but the other thing you did that you didn't call out that I want to say is really important is customizing the giving amounts. Again, these individuals have given an average gift of $50 to $500. And so we've actually just suggested that they give $100. Which I think is great because we're basically saying, hey, we're kind of anchoring in there. We can customize that message. It's not saying $5. It's not saying $1,000. It's kind of fitting into that range which is extremely helpful. You can even take this a step further if you wanted to actually customize the giving amounts to have multiple suggestions, which I think is really powerful, where it's not just one ask amount, it's multiple ask amounts. And again, you can customize those. So even if in your email appeal you said, hey, you could sponsor 1, 3, or 5 children this summer, when they go to the giving page, you could actually reflect 1 child, 3 children, 5 children as suggested amounts. And again, that's taking it one step further. That's going to make sure that that customization even matches further. And
Yep,
again, that's all
absolutely.
doable within DonorDock. And then if you scroll back up, the one thing I do want to call out, because I think it's going to come up, is that all of these giving pages can be embedded on your website,
Yep. Once we
or every giving page, once it's published, has a giving link. And I'll
Yep.
let you take it from there.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and publish now. So this, let's say we've got our giving page. We're really happy with it for this particular use case. We're going to go ahead and publish that. And as Noah said, we now have our direct giving web link. And so I'm going to copy that because I actually am going to use that in the next email that in the email that we're sending out about this. And this is how we are starting to connect the dots here of these different pieces to this connected campaign. But as Noah said, we have QR codes. We have the ability to embed this in your website, and we can come back and we can edit this giving page at any point that we need to and make any changes. So that's step one. We've got our giving page built. Now we need to start trying to get those lapsed donors to our giving page to give them the opportunity to support the organization again. And that's really where, in this example, we're going to be using our email tool. And so I'm going to go over to our email tool. Again, I've pre-created an email here. I chose a subject line that kind of both speaks to who this segment is and creates a bit of urgency with camp. It's been a while and camp is almost here. I went ahead and I have it set to specific marketing lists. So you remember we created that marketing list in our first step. And so I'm going to find that marketing list as this is who I would like to target with this particular email and this campaign. And so there's 99 lapsed donors in there. I'm going to go ahead and set up my settings. Again, I think it's really important to connect these things to the different campaigns and appeals that we are using to track this through. So again, this is our lapsed donor reactivation campaign, and then this is our lapsed donor email number 1 that we're sending out. So I'm going to go ahead and send that. Now, I could schedule this. I could also just go ahead and send it right now, which is what I'm going to do. I went ahead and pre-created this content, and you'll remember that I copied that web URL. So I do have kind of a merge tag here for donor's first name. I've also referenced their past giving. So even merge tagged in their last gift amount and said, your last gift of X amount helped send a child with special needs to a week of camp. So I'm referencing back to something from their history with us as a lapsed donor. And then I have the rest of my content here. I'm going to go ahead and choose my link here that I've created. And I'm going to link this to that giving page that we created in step 1. And so what's cool about our tools in DonorDock is that by linking that link in, when we go to send this email to these 99 donors, we've got automatic tracking that if they click on that link from that email, we're going to keep track of that. And so that when that gift comes through, we're going to know exactly where that gift came from. It came because we sent them this particular email. And so you'll see as we get into some later stages of looking at this, how that can be beneficial for us. And so I wrote this email to be more like something I sat down and wrote, not a marketing email. It's more of a personal type email that I'm sending. And so I've gone ahead, I've got that connected, I've added my giving link, and now I'm going to go ahead and send that email. And we've gotten through that next step of the process where we've created our giving page, and now we've made that ask to this group of 99 donors. So I'm going to hand it back to Noah to keep talking about what happens next.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I do want to call this out because you mentioned something at the end is because we're being thoughtful of and we're starting with who we're sending this communication to, we can write more personalized content. You said, oh, it looks like I just kind of sat down and wrote this email to them. And this is pretty common if you come from like direct response fundraising, where direct mail was a big kind of source of a lot of giving. Is a lot of times those letters are like written from the executive director, or at least from the perspective of the executive director or the program director, and it's speaking directly to the individual. I think when we moved to digital, especially email, we kind of just started like, well, we can send emails for free, so we can just like spam as many out as we want. And we kind of forgot the art that it's still a very personal medium. It's still a medium that's consumed by one individual, like an individual mail piece was. And so thinking about, yes, maybe you have a newsletter that is sent out to everyone that's more generic, it's more bulletin, it's more, hey, this is all the stuff going on. But when we're talking about true fundraising emails, it's really impactful to have that more. I'm writing to an individual person, even if 99 people are receiving this. So thanks for highlighting that, Matt. Let me reshare my screen here and let's keep going. So we've created a giving page that picks up where the email left off. We've written a campaign email that fits the audience. Now we're going to ask question number 4. This is where people kind of stop. The first 3, if you've run a digital campaign, you might be thinking through, you've done before. We send the email, and then we're like, hope for the best. And I think the thing that you want to do even before you send the email is you want to be thinking about what happens after you send the email. So, for example, we're asking people to give. What happens if people give? A gift is truly just the start of the relationship, right? Like these people had given before, we're asking them to re-engage. They've taken the time and effort against all odds in today's society with all the distractions to actually click on your email, go to a giving page, and actually spend the effort to give you $300, $500, $100. You've now thanked them or at least acknowledged that the transaction came through with the automated thank you that Matt already mentioned. But now what? And so thinking about this ahead of time with the expectation that people are going to give to my campaign allows you to what I call keep the momentum going. You're maintaining momentum while the relationship is present. We're not allowing that to get stale and then try to win it back. And so we're keeping that momentum going. So once a gift is made, we might want to send the automated thank you. But then what's next? Maybe we want a receipt and a warm thank you post. Maybe a day later, we want to send a personal note or a short video. Maybe a few days later, we even want to send a non-ask touch point. Maybe it's an impact report. Maybe it's showing one of the children that you've told a story about that have now received sponsorship to attend a camp, and they're of sharing a reflection of what it was like to be able to go to this camp and spend time with their peers and feel seen and supported by the staff. That's a connected experience because you're thinking about how do I maintain the momentum of the gift? Now, on the flip side, the other question is, well, what happens if they don't give? You know, statistics would say that the majority of people that you ask to give aren't going to give, and that's okay. Fundraising is about creating opportunities for people to take steps in the direction that they want their identity and kind of belonging to be a part of, right? And so it's not on you to convince them. It's actually on you to just create opportunities for them to be participate in something that reflects their identity or their purposes or their values, which is why we're being very personalized and kind of inviting them into this story. But the reality is some people won't. So then what happens? A no is rarely a final answer. Often it's just timing. Like I probably have 35 unread emails that have come to my inbox while we've been on this call. Like in 35 minutes, I've received 35 emails, give or take, that I don't know if I'm ever going to pay attention to, right? Some of those messages might be perfectly relevant, perfectly crafted, and it's just the timing is off. And I may never read them. Other times I actually might open the email and then get distracted and be like, wow, that's really impactful. Yes, I remember supporting this organization in the past. And then my Slack goes off and I have to go over here to the Slack and I just forget about it. Or I actually clicked through and got distracted and I was actually like on the go on my mobile phone. And like I just didn't have like I was just not ready to like commit to the gift, but like it what I showed intent that I did potentially want to participate, or I at least was interested in it. All of these different individual paths are all different paths to follow up on. And so what's super helpful is if you're using a platform like DonorDock, you're going to be able to see each of these different paths and then be able to respond accordingly. So I'm going to kick it back to Matt, and Matt's going to kind of walk through both of these examples. Like, how do we actually think about if someone does participate in the campaign? That's not the end, it's just the start. And then also, if someone passively participates and doesn't complete the gift, then what? Matt?
Thanks, Noah. I'm assuming that sharing's coming through again. So yeah, let's talk first about, like you said, what happens if somebody does give. So at the lowest common denominator, we've got that automated thank you acknowledgement that's we know is going to go out. So we can be comfortable that that's going to go out at a bare minimum. But to me, that's not enough. And so one of the things that we have in DonorDock with lapsed donors in particular is, and so we're using this example, but please understand as we talk through this specific example, these same concepts apply to those different segments. Just what you may want to do may differ based on what that segment is. And so one of the things that we have with lapsed donors is a reactivated donor nudge that would show up on the owner of that relationship's action board automatically if you have that turned on. And so I'm not the owner of any of these that we're working with right now, but if I was, the nudge that when a lapsed donor gives is going to pop up on my action board. And so that's a trigger point for me to say, okay, we had a person who was lapsed. They've now given again. I need to reach out and make a connection with that person. Thank them again for their gift, whether that's through email, whether it's picking up the phone, you can kind of decide. So we've got the automated thank you that goes out. We've got the nudge that's going to show up here. For this example, we also have created, and I think this is where things like our journeys come into play. Journeys are We have 6 core journeys that help cover kind of different areas of the life cycle of a donor. So everything from, that first time they give all the way through when they become lapsed and trying to reactivate them. But we've created for this particular example our own reactivated donor journey within our automations tool. And the concept here is simple. It's when a donor gets marked as reactivated, so they moved from lapse back to being an active donor, we want certain things to happen, and we want them to happen every single time, not just some of the time. And so in this case, this example just says when the donor moves from lapsed back to active, we want to wait a day because we know that first thank you went out right away, that automated email. And then we want to send them a welcome back email. So we've created a welcome back email template, and we set up our first step of our automation here to say, wait a day, and then let's send that welcome back email. And that can have merge tags that can be personalized to that specific donor through those merge tags. And then we want to wait 30 days. And because, again, we want to make sure we continue to lean into the human aspect of fundraising. And we want to wait 30 days. And then this is going to trigger us another nudge on our action board 30 days later to go in and to, again, make contact with that donor, give them an update on what has happened, since they gave their gift 30 days ago. How did that gift impact the organization and those that you're serving? And so this is just a very simple example of leveraging our automation tools and our action board to further that idea that this connected campaign doesn't stop when that gift comes in the door. That's the just one more step in the process. And so you can take these ideas and you can apply those, again, either with things that we've pre-built or with things that you maybe want to set up and build on your own. And one of the things that I find to be really valuable for a lot of organizations is to just kind of go through a mapping process. So when you're sitting down to build out this connected campaign, really think about that audience and who are we targeting, going back to that first step, and then mapping out, what do I want to have happen? What is important to drive the experience that I'm trying to drive for that donor if and when they do give based on this campaign? Write those steps down and then go in and you can use the tool to help you make sure that those steps get executed on. So that's how I'm thinking of what to do when a donor does give.
Absolutely.
Next would be, what do we do for the people who don't give? And so we've kind of set ourselves up in the first step to be able to take some steps. So you could go a lot of different ways here. You could build out some complicated automations or things like that. I think the simplest approach is that we want to re-engage with that same group of people again after a period of time for this campaign. So let's say that we originally had decided that we're going to do at least 2 different emails for this campaign. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. You can kind of pick and choose there, but we're just going off of 2. And so when we set up our segment, you remember I said, I'm going to save this report so that it is essentially a dynamic segment that I can use in the future, right? So I'm going to go back to my reporting. Let's say this is now 15 days after we sent that first email, and it's time for us to kind of re-engage with anybody who hasn't given. Now, Noah mentioned what we don't want to do is send another email to everybody again, and the people who maybe have given are going to get another email asking them to give to this campaign again. We want to stay away from that. And that's where this report allows us to have somewhat of a dynamic segment. So I'm going to go back to my saved report and I'm going to load it up. And you'll notice this time we had 99 in here previously. You'll notice that we now have 95. What that tells me, just quickly looking at this, is that I've had a few donors who have given to this campaign or to some campaign, maybe not even just to this campaign, but have given again since in the last 15 days. They're no longer lapsed. And so they no longer fit the criteria of this saved segment or this saved report that I have. So now this tells me that these are the 95 people that I want to target with my second email, which is a second attempt or my re-engagement for the larger group. So right from here, what I can do is I can simply say, I want to send an email now to this group of people. This is my follow-up step. This is my follow-up email. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that's going to kick me over to my email builder where I can now load up a template. Again, I can craft my new message. You maybe have, in my example, I would maybe go ahead and load up that first email that I sent, and then decide from there what I want to change to use on this particular version. So I'm going to load up my template, put in my subject. Again, I want to tie this out to my lapsed donor reactivation campaign. And this time, I want to tie it to my email number 2 appeal. This is my second email that's going out. And that's going to help me know later, as I start to look at when these gifts are coming in, which email actually drove that behavior. And so I can start to understand what seems to be most effective in how we're communicating with these donors. This is a good spot to also say that I don't think it's overkill. No, I'm interested in your opinion here. I don't think it's overkill to actually create even a second giving page that goes with that second email. Mm-hmm. And now I've got, again, that full connected path that kind of is closed loop. I know exactly what's happening and how these different dots are being connected as the whole life cycle goes through the campaign.
Yeah, again, and I think that comes down to, you just want the giving page to match the message and that message to feel connected. And so if you're adjusting how you're positioning it, or maybe again, you've asked for different amounts, you do want to carry that through to the giving page, even if you update the giving page to basically match the follow-up campaign versus the initial campaign. So there's lots of ways to do this. One thing, Matt, I want to ask, there was a question from Allison. So Allison, thanks for submitting this. She said, if the email is supposed to feel personal, should it actually be an email rather than something which looks generated in a marketing tool? Now, I think the one thing that is interesting is like an email is an email regardless, but I think what she's referring to, and Allison, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, is that it looks more like a designed email.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have to do that, right? So like within our email tool, even though you're designing it in like a email marketing tool in DonorDock, is I can just create an email that looks more like a plain text email, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's actually, just as an example, let's look at what we use for our journeys that I mentioned. Those emails are really specifically designed to look like you just sat down in Outlook or in Gmail and wrote that email. And so I chose to put that visual header in my email, and it kind of had that look and feel of something out of an email tool. You absolutely don't have to do that. You can make them, again, just be very text centric emails that look like you sat down and wrote that email.
Yeah.
And you can adjust the fonts and the colors and all the different things that you want to match the style that you might have within your own email system. And you can even build your email signature under your profile in DonorDock and pull that in as a merge tag so that when it goes and sends it out, it puts in your signature just like it would out of Outlook or out of Gmail. So that's a great question. And that's how we would kind of
Yeah.
approach that.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing I'll point out here, Allison, which we don't have time to dig into, is you kind of want to experiment with different things. And so we this wasn't one of our questions. It's more of one of the learnings that we're going to get to is like, I may have a perfect message. Maybe I do want it to be a more of a graphical email, but then maybe I want to take that same message and repackage it into what would be more of like a plain text email, which is being referred to here. Or like how personalized using merge tags. Like maybe I actually want to say like, you came along and supported us on March 15th of 2025. And that might be different for everyone on the list, but you can pull in merge tags like what was their last gift date? And maybe you pull them back into that experience, be like, do you remember making a decision to support our organization on blank date? That was so impactful. And here's this, that, and the other. And again, so Allison, this is where it gets into experimentation, but it all goes back to like, who are you trying to communicate? What are you trying to say? Making sure that's connective throughout the campaign. But then, yeah, definitely experiment with different types of emails, different types of, someone mentioned phone calls or direct mail or postcards or all sorts of things. We just want to make sure that it's connected. And that kind
And
of
I
takes
think
us to, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
one thing I want to add to that. So one of the advantages of like the email to the online giving is things like tracking conversions for you, which we'll get into. If you're going to do other types of campaigns, you're going to send letters, you're going to make phone calls. When you're entering those gifts in, you're going to want to make sure that you are tracking those back to the right campaign and the right appeal. And that's what creates that closed loop that helps you understand the effectiveness of what you're doing and really is the whole concept of like this connected campaign that we're talking about. So I think it's worth
Absolutely.
calling that out.
Yeah. And if can you go back to the lists that we used for the email?
Yep.
Because I want to point out one quick thing here as well. So what Matt was showing is how we could actually send a follow-up email to these 95 individuals. But again, there's other actions you could take here. You could send text messages. You could even print letters using letter templates, or you could even click on the activities if you don't mind. And you could log other types of activities to these individuals. You can even assign tasks to people on your team or to yourself to basically maybe make phone calls. So it's like, hey, I'm not ready to make phone calls yet, but over the next few days, I want to. I can actually set a task for myself for all 95 people and say, I need to actually call all 95 people. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. And we try within DonorDock to make it extremely easy to move from this is the people I want to target. Now, what do I want to do? What's the method of communication that I'm going to use to connect with them?
I want to call out to something, Noah, that I think is maybe not widely known, but I think is really helpful. So let's talk about phone calls, and maybe you have a list of donors you want a group of volunteers to call, and they don't have access to get into DonorDock and and go through and make those calls. You can actually create this group of activities, and then you can export that list of phone calls to Excel with the phone number and other data points that will be helpful to the volunteer. And they can go back just down through that list in Excel and they can click mark that they made the phone call. And you can actually re-import that back into DonorDock and it'll seamlessly go back in and mark those activities complete with any notes that they have put from their phone call. And so, even like some asynchronous types of things are possible. And we try and make that as easy as we can, even if for people who can't necessarily sit down inside DonorDock and do that work. So, oh, I think you're muted, Noah.
Let's jump to the last part, where we kind of talk about like what we're actually learning from these campaigns, and what are we actually learning how to do, basically. And so Matt showed us how we automate the follow-up with people that give, automate or do the follow-up with people that didn't give. But now, what are we actually learning from the campaign as it runs? We want to open rates won't tell you, what to really change. And so we can look at things like open rate or click rate or total raised. But ultimately, we also want to look at things like which segments gave at the highest rate. Now, again, in the demo today, we only showed you one segment, but if you were working this same process through multiple segments, you could actually compare, like, did this segment respond better than this segment? Or which message and page combination converted best? We were just talking about that with Allison. Like maybe we used a plain text email and maybe we used a more designed or graphical email. Which one actually generated the most engagement? But which one actually generated the most giving? And then even beyond that, like which one actually generated the most gifts, not necessarily just giving. And so you can kind of analyze these different things from different angles, and not just so you can do it, but it's all going to then inform when you go back to begin designing a new connected campaign. What does that actually look like for the future? What do we want to try next? What worked well last time and what didn't? So often decisions get made about what we could keep doing just because of inertia. It's like, well, the ball keeps rolling. We do emails like this every time. It's like, well, what if we didn't do it that way? What if we tried something different? And again, all of this learning is going to be helpful along the way. Where did people drop off? When people did donate, what happened next? Did they go watch the video? Did they actually give a recurring gift? What kind of happened next? And all of these questions are things that you can then answer if you're thinking about setting up the campaign holistically. So Matt, what can we learn from our campaign tracking in DonorDock?
Yeah, so there's a few different things, and I'll share my screen here to kind of walk through it. And
Oh, Matt, you're on mute now.
my turn to be talking
There
on
you
mute.
go. Hey, it happens to all of us. It happens to
Yeah.
the best.
So I'm going to share my screen here and just kind of show some examples. But I think a couple things to note as we go through this. Like this is sample data. So, we sent it out. We didn't really send that email to a big, large group of people and so forth. But I'm going to give you some concepts here. So I'll share my screen and you make sure you can see it. There's kind of a couple areas that I think are really key in our reporting around these connected campaigns. And so the first thing we're going to look at is let's look at how our email performed. And so I'm going to go over to my sent emails, and I never sent that second one. So we're just going to look at that first one. I'm going to click into that, and I'm going to be able to see some of those stats that you kind of touched on, Noah. So like how many were sent, how many were delivered, how many unique opens, how many clicks did we get, and how is that looking? As I scroll down then, I can also see conversions. And so this is where we talked a little bit about the concept that when we embedded that giving link in that email, it's going to automatically track for us when somebody gives from that email. What this is showing us is that in the time since we've sent this email, we sent it to the 90, it ended up being 95. So out of all those donors, the 99, 95 had valid emails, hadn't bounced previously, whatever those four were. We've gotten 3 gifts from that. So we right now have about a 3% conversion rate on this specific email. And so now, to Noah's point, we can start to compare the different types of outreach, the different emails. And so when I go to my outreach tool here and go to my analyze tab, I can set my date range. So maybe I just want to look at this month when we've been running this campaign, for example. And I can actually see and compare different emails to each other. And so this would allow me to look across this campaign, and maybe we targeted 3 different segments with 3 different types of emails. It's going to allow me to start to see how these are comparing with each other, including all the way down to that conversion percentage. So we're starting to piece together what is effective in what we're doing, what might we want to do more of in the future, and which things maybe aren't resonating with our donors as much as others. And so between the giving or the email page itself and this analyze tab, you can start to really get a good feel, specifically around email, how these things are performing. If we wanted to look at it, let's say we were doing something that was not email based and we had done a phone call, and that's where we can look at the appeal level. And so this would allow me to go into a specific appeal. You can see here, I can look at my email one as an example, and you can see that I solicited 95 contacts with this. I didn't set a goal on this. We could have set a goal on this, and I probably should have. But you can see that we've raised $180 from those 3 gifts that we touched on that we saw in the email report. And so let's say we had done a phone call appeal to 100 people, and we'd track those donations that have come in to that appeal. We can also see our conversion percentage at the appeal level. So that's going to give us an indication across things other than just email. How are these different things working in comparison with each other? And then the other area that I think is really worth looking at is now at the giving page level. So we got people to the giving page. How is the giving page itself performing? And so I'm going to go to my giving page, the lapsed donor reactivation giving page, and I'm going to view my giving page dashboard. And this is going to show me how I'm doing against my goal. It's going to show me those same 3 gifts because they all came in through that giving page that we've looked at. But it's also going to show me my page views, and it's going to show me conversion percentage. Now, this sample data, because I actually just kind of made it look like these gifts came through this giving page in this demo. So it's not actually tracking those as conversions, but that's going to track. And that conversion rate, when we think of it on a giving page, is the relationship of gifts to page views. So this is helping us understand, once somebody gets here to this giving page, how is this giving page doing at actually converting them into making a gift? And so this is all information and data that can help inform us as we're building out future connected campaigns on what has worked, what resonates with our donors, and specifically these different segments. And that's going to help us make sure that as we design new campaigns in the future, we're using that information to make them as effective as we possibly can.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt, for kind of wrapping that up. And again, I think that's the power of a connected campaign. So I'll just repeat this is you're going to be able to learn what's working and what's not working. And we shared a lot here, right? There's 6 questions, and you might be like, we're not doing any of this stuff. And so our challenge as we close is really just to try one thing. Open your last campaign and maybe walk through these 6 questions. Like, did we actually segment? If not, just start there, and then maybe write 2 segments instead of 6, don't go from 1 to 7, type thing. I think there's an opportunity for you just to start small. Or maybe it's like, hey, we actually don't customize the giving page in the emails. Let's try that. And so this opportunity is really inviting you to test and experiment, but ultimately to improve and learn from each campaign. So Matt, thank you for demoing that. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to kick it over to Matt, and I believe Rob's going to be joining us as well to ensure that we kind of answer your Q&A. And so thank you all for being here. I'm really grateful for Matt and your time. And so we'll open it up for Q&A if anyone has it.
Thanks, Noah. Yeah, if there's any questions, happy to answer those. If there's any comments, happy to hear those as well. Catherine, good question. So, direct mail is one of those channels that I think can kind of be polarizing. Like, I think some people believe very heavily in it. I think others don't. But I do think that there is a place for direct mail and ways that you can kind of make the connection for these things, like that QR code that we showed. So each giving page, generates that QR code. You can leverage that within the that printed or that direct mail to get those people back to the correct giving page to give, based on them using that QR code. So I think there is value in it for certain segments and for certain audiences. So I always tell people, like, trying to understand your donors and their preferences can really help in this. Like, if you know that this group of donors prefers digital and you send them a direct mail, you may not be very effective in that. If you know that they don't ever want to use a computer, or they don't, and they're going to mail you a check either way, then direct mail might make more sense. So some of it comes down to like knowledge of preferences and just like good segmentation of donors, and then targeting different appeals based on that to what channel you think is going to be most effective for that segment to actually give. So I think that's one way to kind of think through that. Judy, exec director is against segmenting. How can I persuade them? They have no fear of overwhelming people with too many emails. It's an interesting question. And Rob, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this one too, from a marketing perspective. But I think that, you know, proof is sometimes in the pudding. And so, like, I've said for years, I've been in this space for a long time working with CRM and marketing tools. And like, the most ineffective thing that I think you can do is send the same email to everyone on the same cadence, same message, same channel, and think that that's going to be effective. And it goes back to what I was just talking about, like understanding preferences and channels. And that's where segmentation really comes in and starts to work really, really well. That's a mechanism for some of that segmentation. I think the answer is, if you could get them to let you try it, you will likely find that it will be much more effective than just the blanket approach of sending everything to everyone and hoping that that resonates. And again, Rob, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts there, but
Yeah, are you able to hear me and see me?
yep, we can.
Okay. Uh, Camera wasn't working for a bit there. I agree. I think I was going to ask you that same question, Matt, around channels, because we talked a lot heavily about email on this, but we didn't touch text messaging, social media, print. And I 100% agree with you. That's where segmentation is really powerful. And knowing what channel your audience and your segment is living on. And so you're actually showing up there, right? And then you can, again, track that based on maybe a giving page that is specifically for a social media post. And so you can look at the appeals coming through different posts, that type of thing. So 100% agree.
Yep. And I think people sometimes would say, well, gosh, I'm going to end up with so many giving pages. And, one thing you can think about doing is, after your campaign is done, you can archive those giving pages that you're no longer using. And if somebody were to hit that link still, then it's not going to not work, but it's not going to show up in your active list of giving pages inside DonorDock. The other thing I didn't touch on, I probably should have, and this is just a very small thing, is our integration with GoFundMe Pro also works to automatically track the giving pages. And so that's something that it will recognize a GoFundMe Pro link in an email and actually do conversion tracking the same way through that email. I should have said that in the meeting, but just thinking about like people who aren't necessarily using all or exclusively DonorDock products, there you can still do these concepts even with other things as well, and the different channels as well.
Yeah, super good information. Loved seeing how this can all connect through a CRM like DonorDock. If you guys have more questions, Matt and Noah and I are always available via email or LinkedIn. So reach out to us, and we'll of course be sending a recap email of the recording and all the links and discussions that we had here as well. So Matt, thank you so much for presenting today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's great to see you all.
All right, see you guys.